Good morning. The markets are moving and so are you from the BizNews studios. This is BizNews Daybreak for Friday, the 23rd of January, 2026. I'm Alec Hogg. Here's the context you need to win the day. The Greenland pivot by Donald Trump rally continued on Wall Street last night with both the S&P and Nasdaq going higher. S&P up 0.5%, Nasdaq just under 1% better. The Rand too is continuing to strengthen, starting today at 16 Rand and 12 cents to the US dollar. Started the week at 16 Rand and 40 cents. Gold is closing in on $5,000. It's only $50 short right now, while digital gold Bitcoin hovers around $89,000 unchanged. Among US heavyweights, Meta was the big winner last night, up 5.5%. Tesla also shone on the day that Elon Musk finally made his Davos debut. More about that later. On the JSE, Sasol jumped 14% on a higher oil price, and a 2% gain for financials helped the market overall to a green day after it hadn't done that well earlier in the week. Internationally, TikTok and Intel lead the overnight news. Here's Doug Christner from Bloomberg in New York.
TikTok and its Chinese parent company have closed a deal to transfer part of TikTok's U.S. operations to American investors. Here is Bloomberg's Annabelle Drulers.
We've got TikTok and ByteDance that have established that JV to transfer parts of TikTok's US business to non-Chinese owners. And so as part of that deal, you're going to get essentially a newly created US entity. And we've actually already been hearing that staff within the US had already been starting to be split into these teams just in the last few weeks. So essentially just creating a bit of a firewall around what happens in the States.
That is Bloomberg's Annabelle Drulers. Now, this new US entity will be owned by Oracle, Silver Lake, MGX, and existing ByteDance investors. President Trump says he has completed interviews with candidates to succeed Jay Powell as Fed chairman. The struggling chipmaker Intel issued a lackluster forecast for the current quarter. Now, in recent months, the market has been betting on new products from Intel, further boosting the company's finances. However, Intel says supply shortages are making it harder to meet customer demand. We got reaction from Matt Bryson of Wedbush Securities.
So it's a little bit hard to tell when Intel tells you that they're really supply constrained. You don't know with their guide, how much is the disappointment on the top line? Is it their inability to fulfill demand, or is it rather just demand has dipped?
We're hearing a bit more on that framework deal for Greenland reached on Wednesday between President Trump and NATO. Following the announcement, Trump said he would not impose tariffs on certain European countries that were set to begin February 1st. The president's pivot on Greenland has left many European allies scratching their heads. However, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says the U.S. relationship with the EU is perfectly fine.
The framework is a national security-based framework. That's what the United States cares about. We care about our national security, and we care about the shipping lanes. So let's talk about the national security and shipping lanes, and let's see if we can't figure out a framework to do that together.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick speaking to Bloomberg at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Our top local story is on politics, where the latest round of byelections delivered shock results for the Democratic Alliance in both the Western Cape and Gauteng. Speaking on the electoral roadshow with Chris Steyn, analyst Wayne Sussman unpacked how the Patriotic Alliance has snatched 2 wards from the DA in George, while the Freedom Front Plus came very close to winning 1 in Tshwane. Here's Sussman with the details.
We had our first round of by-elections, 2 in the Western Cape and 1 in Gauteng.
Right. Let's go to George first.
A big night for the Patriotic Alliance and Gauteng McKenzie. The Patriotic Alliance were able to win not 1, but 2 seats off the Democratic Alliance. This was in the area of Pakalsdorp, where they took they won a very close race against the Democratic Alliance. And then later we'll get to the area of Conville, also in George, where they won another seat off the Democratic Alliance. So my analysis here, before I jump, and it's going to be a similar analysis to Ward 17, is the PA's ability to beat the DA by winning over voters from smaller parties like Good and PBI and energizing new voters who didn't participate the last time to come out. And this was even more pronounced, and I'm going to jump to it right away. Ward 17, the Conville-Rosemoor area. The PA grew from 1% to 60%. The DA getting 38%, declining 2%. So essentially getting very similar to what they got the last time. The ANC falling. And again, who was not on the ballot here, Chris? Good was not on the ballot. They got 32% last time. The plastic besorgde inwoners were not on the ballot. They got 21%. That is 53%. If we look at the PA 60%, essentially in Ward 17, PBI and Good voters went in only one direction. And that direction was to Gauteng Mackenzie's Patriotic Alliance.
Let's go over to Tshwane then.
This area is very close to the Supersport Park Cricket Stadium, famous cricket stadium, in the Centurion part, in the areas of Littleton and De Hoovers. And the DA's vote share did decline from 59% to 53%. But the Freedom Front are the big story here, growing from 16% to 44%. Very impressive showing by the Freedom Front. We saw a by-election, I think it was 2024, where it was in the area in the east of Pretoria, the Freedom Front gave the DA a scare. In other subsequent by-elections in traditional DA areas, the DA did very, very well to reassert themselves and establish themselves as the dominant force in these suburban wards. Last night, the Freedom Front came very close, within about 250 votes, if my numbers are correct, of beating the DA and causing another major political shock. And Chris, this is why it's always important to go into the voting districts. In this Ward 57, there is the area of Littleton, where the DA and the Freedom Front have historically done the best. And then next to it is the area of De Hoovers, where the ANC, Action SA, EFF are more competitive. It is a DA area, but the ANC, the EFF, Action SA are players in that area. And what will worry the DA greatly is, yes, they won the ward, but if you look at the suburb of Littleton, the Freedom Front, and this is where most of the voters in the ward are, actually beat the DA. They beat them in both voting districts, and the DA will be greatly concerned about its fall. What saved the DA's bacon was the area of De Hoovers, where they are traditionally relatively the weakest in. Here they did incredibly well. By the way, I just want to mention the ANC quickly, because as we know, they are currently the largest party in Tshwane. They were on the ballot here, and their support declined from 8% to 2%, so essentially cratering. So the Freedom Front activists around South Africa will look at this result in Tshwane and say, like in 2021, where we gave the DA a headache, last night's result in Ward 57 shows that we can be a force in Tshwane, in Pretoria, and in other areas around the country. They'll be over the moon. So when one takes a step back and look at these three results, the DA started 2026 with great hope that they will make a big splash in Johannesburg and across the nation in 2026's local government elections. There's a lot of work for them in George and in Tshwane after we see these results.
This is where the unthinkable happened. They just came here and took his car.
No. I sold it to them. What's this?
It's crime scene tape. Did they pay you at least?
Within 15 minutes, money was in my account.
Were you happy with the number they brought you?
I got almost the same price as what I paid for the car. Everything was easy, everything was painless.
Well, there you have it, South Africa. With WeBuyCars, you won't come short. What told you really?
1.93.
WeBuyCars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Now, if you ever doubted that there's been a takeover at the World Economic Forum, this story will confirm that there really has been. Elon Musk was desperate to get to the WEF, according to the people there that I know quite well. He often applied and asked to get in, but they didn't want him there. Now he is one of the stars of the show. He made a surprise last-minute appearance in Davos yesterday, this after previously dismissing the World Economic Forum as boring and an unelected world government. In this excerpt from the Bloomberg Business Week podcast, hosts Carol Mazar and Tim Stenovec discuss the Tesla CEO's unexpected arrival. We'll also then hear Musk himself speaking directly to BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, who seems to be taking a star role there right now. Fink is one of the big drivers behind the new look WEF, and in it, Musk sets ambitious new timelines for his Optimus humanoid robots and claims that full self-driving is now essentially a solved problem, ready for global rollout.
The World Economic Forum in Davos.
I heard of it.
Okay. He's called it, quote, boring. He slammed the group as a body that's increasingly becoming an unelected world government that the people never asked for and don't want.
So he's like, I'm never going to go to that thing. That's ridiculous. Why? Like, who would waste their time there?
The he we're talking about is Elon Musk.
Correct.
And those are things that he said about the World Economic Forum in the past. Yet today, for the first time, he made an appearance.
He showed up, didn't he?
He showed up and
do you think he was like,
some news.
Hey, it's Elon. I've been busy at the factory, but
listen,
I'd like to come to Davos.
I don't know how it works. He was confirmed as a last-minute addition for a Thursday afternoon session. He spoke to BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. Here's just part of that conversation.
We do have some of the Tesla Optimus robots doing simple tasks in the factory. We expect probably later this year. By the end of this year, I think they'll be doing more complex tasks. But still deployed in an industrial environment, and probably sometime next year, I'd say that by the end of next year, I think would be selling humanoid robots to the public. That's when we are confident that it's very high reliability, very high safety, and the range of functionality is also very high. You can basically ask it to do anything you'd like.
You're already seeing that in Tesla cars, the software changes that you're doing. And what is it, every quarter now, a software change that upgrades the ability of the robot within the car?
Yes, the Tesla full self-driving software, we update it sometimes once a week. Recently, some of the insurance companies have said that it is actually so safe, when Tesla full self-driving is so safe that they're offering customers half-price insurance if they use Tesla full self-driving in their car.
And that can be monitored by the insurance company? Is that part of the agreement then?
Yeah. I think self-driving cars is essentially a solved problem at this point.
Right.
And Tesla's rolled out a sort of robo-taxi service in a few cities, and will I think be very, very widespread by the end of this year within the U.S. And then we hope to get supervised full self-driving approval in Europe hopefully next month.
Really, that quickly?
Yeah, and then maybe a similar timing for China, hopefully.
Is the US tech bubble about to burst, or is there still value to be found? Anthony Ginsberg, the South African who lives in California and founded and runs GinsGlobal, joined us yesterday to argue that there is still value, pointing investors towards small caps and robotics. He also shares a compelling roadmap for how South Africa can secure better trade deals with the US if it plays its cards right. Ginsberg is very much in the mainstream with his finger on the pulse on US-SA relations, certainly from the American side.
The economy in America is actually going gangbusters. We've actually had almost a 4% growth in GDP for the third quarter. There's a lot of interesting economic improvements that he's made here. For example, he's now trying to cut the credit card interest charges down to 10% from these usury rates of higher than 27, 28%. Unemployment is around 4%. The stock market recently hit an all-time high. So there are some very positive tailwinds. As you know, under President Biden, there were almost no M&A or acquisition deals going on. Today, you hear about Netflix buying Warner Brothers. There's a lot more activity. I can tell you we're miles from any recession. If you travel in the States, it's incredibly busy. All the airports, I've been on the road quite a bit recently. They're expecting 3+% GDP growth, Alec, again this year. The Americans don't understand why would South Africa not want to trade, whether it's through AGOA or more closely with the United States, where you actually beneficiate cars and the citrus areas. There's a lot of value add. It's very different to the trade you do with the BRICS. The Chinese, frankly, have been dumping cheap goods in the US for years. And actually, the biggest car manufacturing plant in the world was supposed to be built just south of the San Diego-Mexican border under President Biden, and Trump has stopped that. And I'm told in South Africa you can get a lot of cheap cars now that are Chinese. But the question is this the kind of trade that South Africa really needs?
Anthony, you are coming to the BizNews conference in March. It's less than 2 months away. You'll be part of our investor masterclass, which is the first half of the day. It's the full morning on Tuesday the 10th. What message are you going to be bringing from California to tell South Africans who do appreciate the fact that you've got your finger on the pulse, both with the relations between South Africa and the US, which you've made a particular area of interest for yourself, and of course with the way that stocks are performing in the United States and on Wall Street?
Well, I would say don't let Trump upset you too much about what's going on in the US. There are a lot of positive things just below the surface. So yes, Greenland's the topic of the day, and Venezuela was just a few weeks ago. And these are the headlines politically. But frankly, the economy is going gangbusters. If predictions are right, we may be looking at a 3.5% to 4% GDP growth, Alec, which for a industrialized first world economy is massive. South Africa, I just wish could even get to half that rate. Hopefully SA will get to 2% this year. So the per capita income is growing in the US, and the stock market is broadening out. It's very true that it was a very narrow bull market the last 2.5, 3 years. But watch out now for the financials, the healthcare stocks, consumer stocks, industrials, and these small caps. They've actually have not run until recently, and many of their PE ratios are well below 20. So it's not true that America is overpriced. It's probably the Mag 7 that give it a bad name, but there's a lot of good value out there. And just lastly, don't ignore the fact that South Africa could be doing a lot more trade with the US. Send an ambassador here who can speak business, and I really think you can thread the needle and get a deal done on AGOA and getting those tariffs down by at least half, down to, let's say, 15% from 30%.
Onto the major corporate news that came out of the JSE yesterday. Fashion retailing giant Mr. Price received a hefty vote of confidence from one of South Africa's biggest asset management firms. Despite widespread condemnation of the group's decision to buy a German retailer, a decision that sent the shares plummeting, in a regulatory filing released yesterday, Mr. Price confirmed that clients of Allan Gray have increased their aggregate stake in the company, crossing the major 10% threshold. Allan Gray clients now hold a combined 10.13% of Mr. Price's total equity. The shares rose 2.76% on the news. The price is still down around 20% since the takeover deal was announced. Truworth International is seeing a tale of two markets in its latest update, which was on the Stock Exchange News Service yesterday afternoon. While group retail sales remained flat at 12.5 billion rand for the half year, the UK division, Office, continues to shine, growing sales by over 6% in sterling, despite a tough British economy. Back home in South Africa, however, Truworth Africa remains under pressure, with sales dipping nearly 4% as local consumers are feeling the pinch. Looking ahead, the management sees early signs of a South African recovery. It expects half-year earnings per share to June to remain steady, forecasting a slight uptick of 2%. The shares rose 5% on the news. It was an opposite reaction to news from the Clicks Group, whose shares dropped 6% yesterday after the group posted a 7.5% rise in turnover, that for the 20 weeks to January, driven by a robust 9% surge in pharmacy sales and record Black Friday trading. So what bothered investors? CEO Bertina Engelbrecht revealed that a warehouse system delay in Cape Town left shelves empty on Black Friday, costing the retailer an estimated 120 million rand in lost sales. Combined with aggressive competitor discounting, this capped retail sales for the period at 6% growth. On the upside, distribution arm UPD grew turnover double digits despite losing 2 bulk contracts. And finally, in the corporate news side, Investec continues to be active in the market. It bought back a lot of shares in the last few days, and since the program began in August, the group has deployed over £37 million in London and 1.1 billion in South Africa, with nearly £500 million of that rands going directly towards reducing the company's share count. It's now bought back 3.7 million shares. That share buyback of Investec probably explains why the price has been firm of late. Well, now you have the edge. For the full interviews and the details behind these stories, head over to biznews.com. I'm Alec Hogg. Thanks for starting your morning with us. Now go and seize the day.